Here we go. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I feel like we don't talk a lot about the importance of physical touch, holding, cuddling, any kind of embrace, and the impact it has on the nervous system. Because if you've had any trauma, specifically sexual trauma, unwanted touch, it can be a tricky subject. And so I am really excited to have Michelle, our guest today, join us to dive into this topic. Welcome to the podcast, Michelle.
Thank you for having me, Kristen. I love spreading the word of what is a relatively newer modality, but is having big impacts as I keep trying to push it into the talk therapy space.
I would say it's pretty radical, honestly. I really would.
Kristen, we go Cuddlist. I've been going to therapy conferences for a lot of years, trying to just kind of nudge my way into the space. And this last year, we went to Psych Networker for the first time in DC and had an exhibitor table. And we had an exhibitor table last year at Innovations, which is kind of their sister conference on the West Coast. And we get flooded with people, so much curiosity. And at the same time, we joke in the Cuddlist circles that we're edgier than psychedelics for
I
people.
can see
Yeah,
that. I can really see that. So tell us about yourself and how you founded Cuddlist because
sure.
you are on the front end of something. So
Yeah.
let's hear more
Well,
about you.
I say I found Cuddlist. Cuddlist was founded by two other co-owners that have since retired. So we'll back up the calendar to the fall of 2015. And Cuddlist was launched by the two co-founders, Madeline Guanazzo and Adam Lippin. And they had met through an organization called Cuddle Party, which is a event that teaches a lot about consent and communication. Like the beginning is quote unquote the rules of the event, but then it's more of like lessons around life and consent and how to be strong yes and strong no in their space. And then you get time to practice by asking other people if they would like to cuddle or talk or any, really, the sky's the limit under the like rated G umbrella. And they met through that organization. And Madeline was doing some one-on-one professional cuddle work. And she saw a real need to have training for the cuddlers to keep them safe, but also to keep the clients safe. And so Cuddlist was born, and I happened to find it right after it launched. And I was living in West Michigan. And at that time, you had to go to training in Chicago or New York. And so it was close, and I could say yes. And I've been with the company ever since. And then when Madeline wanted to retire, she asked me if I would take over as director of training. And then I bought into the company at the beginning of 2025. So now I'm a co-owner. So it's kind of a fairy tale story in the sense that I grew up in a household where bodily autonomy was not taught. It was not modeled by my mother. Kind of that traditional, I'd say like um, my role as a wife was to make sure that my partner was one sexually satisfied amongst many other duties. And my mom modeled that in a really not an empowering way. She would avoid, it was clear to us as three daughters that she was avoiding contact with him rather than just saying, I don't, this isn't something I have to do. And so I recreated that in my first marriage. So right before Cuddlist was launched, my first marriage ended, and I needed a place to really relearn or learn for the first time how to be a better communicator, how to practice like what are my boundaries and how do I articulate them and how do I hold them? And then also just understanding that I have bodily autonomy. I have sovereignty in my body to make my own decisions. And so Cuddlist was an accident for me in the sense that I thought I'm just a mom that I could be a professional cuddler. I didn't know I was walking into what would be a real intense repair process for the soup that I was raised in that wasn't exactly um, modeling the healthy relationship skills that I needed to know. So, fairy tale, absolutely.
Okay, we have so much to break down here because
Yeah.
somebody might be like cuddlist and have a physical response to that word.
hmm hmm
What do you say to that? So if someone's like, "Ooh, that just feels like you have an adverse, let's say you have an
Sure.
adverse reaction."
Yeah. That's the thing about the word cuddle is it immediately brings something up to you. Either it brings that adverse reaction or it immediately brings you a sense of, oh, like a softness, right? And I've had this conversation with my colleagues many times about the word cuddle. Do we get away from the word cuddle because it brings up feelings that are connected to sex a lot of times? We only, like some people only cuddle after they've had sex with a partner. We offer an strictly platonic service, and that can be confusing for clients or potential clients at times. And so it is the right word in some ways because you immediately get this sense in your body of what is offered. There's a space to feel connection and especially like nervous system co-regulation. There's all these yummy benefits that our body knows just from that word. And then for some people, that word is going to bring up so many negative
Mhm.
feelings or memories. And that's also kind of the beauty of it is it's the space where you can change that narrative if it's something that you want to work on.
So here we are with this radical approach. Okay.
Hmm.
Someone says, well, what is it exactly? Like, okay, what is this, like, what is this? And what are the benefits? So
Yeah.
someone says, well, I don't even know what she's talking about. Like, what does
Hmm.
this even mean? And
Yeah.
then what does that have to do with like healing myself?
Yeah. Well, I think Cuddlist has evolved in who our clients are. So when the company first launched, I think it was really focused on lonely people, touch people that are missing touch in their life, and they know that there's this thing that they're missing, right? And Cuddlist has a method. We teach all of our trainees that every Cuddlist session has a little core that looks the same, and then the rest of it is wide open to interpretation and what is the desire of the person that is coming to see a Cuddlist. So every Cuddlist session has a code of conduct. It is, the basics of like, we promise to practice consent. We promise to show up with good hygiene. We promise to keep our clothes on and to not chase arousal. Although arousal happens, it's part of a natural response to relaxation. We're never going to pursue it. That is not the purpose of the space that we're in. So this comes up a lot with male clients worried about what happens, and it's like, well, I'm comfortable. And my ask to you would be, is there something you need to shift so that we can either take a break or change positions or do something so that you're in your most comfortable space, not pursuing more of that feeling, right? And so we have those. We have like no substances that inhibit your ability to consent. We keep our clothes on. I'm trying to think, what if I already said, right? There's these, I think it's 11. I'm not even sure of the number, but we have this code. And then every session also starts with an opening agreement. And I think this is the part that is maybe the most impactful for both the client and the practitioner. And in that agreement, we're agreeing that I promise you, let's say, Kristen, we're in a session. You come into my office. This is my space behind me. And I'll say, Kristen, where would you like to sit? Please pick a spot that feels good for you. And then maybe you sit, against the pillows. And then I say, where would you like me? You can place me anywhere in this room. And for the person that is already like really comfortable with touch and they're just like, I want to get into this feeling of connection and feeling your warmth, they might say, sit right next to me. Right. And then somebody else who comes in who is like, I'm here to titrate or to take small doses of this to see what I actually might like. They might set me right here in my office chair. And both of those options are completely okay and encouraged here. And then I'll say, okay, so this is a session for you. This is not about what do I want. This is a place for you to explore what you might want. And so I promise you that I will never say yes to anything that I'm not a wholehearted yes to. So you never have to worry about that. And I promise you that if I'm ever uncomfortable, I'm going to speak up so that we change that thing, whatever that is, whether it's my arm is falling asleep or my hip hurts, or even if the conversation is uncomfortable for me, I promise you that I will be honest with you and let you know when something needs to shift. And then I say, can you offer me that promise too? And that's a tricky spot for people if they come in here and they already really feel confident in their ability to speak up. That can be a really easy yes. I happen to work with a lot of trauma survivors, and you can see that look in their eyes. And this is what I love is they're honest with me and they say, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I'm very good at that. And I'm like, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm going to be more mindful of that. And we're going to work on that so that as you keep coming, that's going to be a muscle that you get to build up. Right. And then I say, how would you like to connect today? Like, notice I didn't say, how do you want to cuddle? It doesn't have to include cuddling at all. It might just be having someone to listen to you, where you get to play with the physical proximity of me. I'm not a trained talk therapist. I'm not here to diagnose or manage any of your mental health issues, but I am a really good listener. And it's more about getting you to notice what you notice in your body. Is there a space where I'm too close? Is there a space where you don't feel like I'm close enough? And we even have a toolbox of exercises where I'll play with clients and say, okay, well, what if I stand by the door? What do you notice in your body? Oh, I notice that you feel too far away and that I'm maybe losing you. Okay, great. If I move a little closer, how does that change? So it's a really fun playground to start to like get to know ourselves in a very different way. Is that a really complicated answer to your question?
Not at all.
Maybe for every session looks different. I keep games
Mhm.
in my office. We could play a simple board game. I keep coloring supplies. I happen to be a person who likes to use my space to kind of explore what does our inner child miss or need from us to build that connection back up. So I have children's books I keep in my office. There's such a fast, direct um, lesson in a children's book. And if I see a client that's got something going on and I'm like, oh, I've got this great, great, cute little book to read, it brings up a lot of sometimes really warm memories of their childhood. Sometimes it touches on memories they haven't thought about in a really long time that can be um, maybe complicated. You could imagine I have that mom vibe, and so I get to do a lot of reparenting with clients. It's just a space to have a new experience. And it might be because you're lonely, and it might be because you're working through childhood sexual assault. It runs the gamut of people that come in here to see me.
Yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking of the listener going, this is like they're trying to sort through when would they feel led to a cuddlist. I hear like if someone didn't get the physical touch as a child,
Mhm.
but you'll hear people say, I'm not a hugger. Like, I'm not a
Yeah,
hugger. What do you say to someone that says, that like, I'm not a
that's
hugger?
okay. Yeah, I'm not here to change you, but if you say, I'm not a hugger, but I'd like to be,
By the way,
or
I am
I,
a hugger. I'm just saying
yeah,
there's people that are not, and I
yeah,
respect that too. Like,
yeah,
what do you say for those folks that are like, like,
that's okay. But there's some folks that aren't huggers, but they'd like to be. They see people, they don't understand why do they like that. They might
mm-hmm.
not even have a frame of reference. Maybe they were a hugger at one time and that shifted. Maybe they've never been. I didn't grow up in a family of huggers. I don't even consider myself very cuddly as a person, which is so funny. People go, but I just was at dinner last night and this woman goes, but you're a professional cuddler. And I said, I know. I love cuddling with my clients. In my regular world, I love using cuddling for regulation. If I'm feeling a little anxious, I know I can pull my husband for a quick cuddle. That'll be his first thing. He'll say, do you want to go cuddle real quick? And I'm like, yeah, that might feel really nice because I know what works for me, right? There, it, you never have to be a hugger. This is not about there is one true way or anything like that. But maybe you have a partner that wishes that you were more physically affectionate. we may not be able to change that, but we might be able to figure out that we can change that. We don't know. We don't know. But I'm happy to like get in the weeds with you and see if there's a way that you like to be affectionate. Maybe it's that you had, what if your parents forced you to hug
Mhm.
Uncle Tim and Uncle Tim was creepy? Or even just you didn't want to hug grandma, but you were forced to do it and you got that ingrained message that you don't get to choose what you do with your body, and then you become the adult that is like, I'm going to choose no all the time. It might be that you just didn't like the if you have a sensitivity to different kinds of touch. Like I like to take clients through some different like how do you feel about really, really light touch? Some people like, nope, don't like it. Great. Like check, know that about thyself, right? I know that when I'm feeling playful, I love a light tickle, right? When I'm feeling anxious, I want like firm touch. I want to be held tightly, kind of like a baby being swaddled, right? There's so many different uses for touch, and I think we get really locked in that there's one way to cuddle, there's one way to hug, there's just one way to have physical contact, and that's just not the case.
I also think with couples, like the minute someone says you want to cuddle, like
Mm,
let's just use a stereotypical. This doesn't mean for everybody, but let's say the wife's like, I don't really have the energy. I don't really want to cuddle because then you're going to want sex.
yep.
So they're like, nope, not doing that because that's going to be the pathway and I don't have it to offer. So I'm
Hmm.
just not going to do it.
Oh, having a space where you can make that really clear that is not on the table. I've worked with a couple where the wife was they were starting to experience some desire discrepancy, which was new for their relationship. And what it really came down to is like she needed connection outside of the bedroom. And so often we feed our connection inside the bedroom and forget to like have, what do they call it? Non-demand touch. Right. And so they both worked from home and they started cuddling together over lunch, knowing that the boundaries were that it was strictly cuddling. It was strictly a platonic space, and that helped their sex life. Right? We missed that. I didn't have that in that first marriage that I mentioned at the beginning of this. Touch really, really primarily happened in the bedroom. And so yeah, you get that moment where your partner comes up behind you while you're doing dishes and you're like, oh, like really? Not right now. Or I'm touched out from the kids. Or like there's so many reasons. But to like if you can set the pattern that touch doesn't equal sex. And that's what we get to do in our space all the time because let's be real, a lot of people come into our work, especially in the early days, thinking that this was something else. And it's not. And it feels gross. It feels, as a practitioner, when a client comes in and wants something that I'm not offering them, it feels yucky. And I remember in the early years going, what do I do to get rid of this yucky feeling? Right? But if a client comes in and they're genuinely curious and they want to know how to feel that platonic connection, we can work on it, even if it is hard for them in the beginning to separate the two. That doesn't scare me at all. But it can be it can be a new tool to make for you, having better relationships.
I have so many questions. Like my mind
Hmm.
is racing. Okay. One is a trauma therapist. Okay. Well, I do
Hmm.
marriage and family and trauma and internal family systems and all these. We are taught like boundaries with clients. I
Hmm.
mean, it's very important we keep boundaries with
Hmm.
clients. What do
Hmm.
you say to that for maybe people listening that may be practitioners or maybe going to therapy and being like, well, my therapist is like 10 feet away from me and they don't want no hugging, nothing.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that I don't know. There's a hope that one day those that we'll teach enough consent in the therapy school to be able to have something that's a little bit closer to being a human being with another human being. Because I think that what is the statistics say that 90% of the success of talk therapy is the connection between the therapist and the client. And I know that we can't have those things because some people do bad things, right? We have a history of we are the consent culture is so new.
Hmm.
We have to learn things like power dynamics and who is this space for? And like thinking a few steps down the road and maybe not like coming from more of a mature space. So, yeah, your talk therapist can't do that with you. I've been in talk therapy sessions where I wish my therapist would even just sit next to me, would have felt really comforting. This isn't that, right? This is specifically a modality that we talk very openly about transference and countertransference. I know that like a lot of therapists will say, "Oh my gosh, but what do you do if a client falls in love with you?" And I'm like, that's where the best magic happens because I know my boundaries. Most of my clients also have a talk therapist and they have a place to go talk about their feelings for me, with me. If they tell me, I'm like a person that throws the word love around like it's free and why not? But it also comes with a, but what does that mean to you? For me, love is a verb. And I love all of my clients. And there's been clients that have never had someone tell them that they love them.
Hmm.
I get to do that. My preference, though, is that they have a talk therapist that they're also working with so that if that gets complicated for them, they have somebody to go talk to about it. But I'm very clear that I do not have relationships with my clients outside of work. This is how they see me. So when they start to position themselves, and I've had this happen, where a client will be like, "But I'm special, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're going to need to do some practicing of yes and no's because I have a feeling you're going to ask for something and you're going to need to be prepared to hear my no."
Hmm.
And so it's a love is good. Love is good. And this is why it's important to pick your professionals.
It's deep. This is a deep rumble. It's a deep
Hmm.
rumble.
Hmm.
You had mentioned EMDR before because
Yes.
I'm an EMDR trained clinician. For those that have listened, know that I am. If you're listening for the first time, welcome. EMDR is called eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's basically a modality that's been around over 40 years that's used for trauma, and among other things, anxiety,
Hmm.
depression, repressed memories, or even a memory, a flashback, a scent, a sound. I mean, we can do so many things with EMDR, body memory, body sensations.
Hmm.
How do you incorporate, because you had mentioned you had worked with
Yeah.
EMDR and cuddling. How does that go hand? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's been it's a newer thing that I've been experimenting with. I have a client that, gosh, we've been working together for over 2 years at this point. So we have a really well-established relationship. Her body knows me. She has a trauma therapist. She's done 6 years of work with her, something like that. She does not live here in San Diego where I'm at. So she was coming to visit me, oh gosh, a couple summers ago. She didn't come to visit me. She was coming to visit San Diego and she had been following me and she thought, oh, here's an opportunity to try a session with Michelle because she had been working with a local cuddlist in her area. And we did a couple over like the next couple months. I saw her a couple of times. Once here in San Diego and once in Baltimore because I go to Baltimore regularly because I used to live there. So I have kind of a second practice there. And we did a couple cuddle sessions, and she was like, "Can I introduce you to my therapist?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so we started working on what we call the triadic model, which think triangle. So there's the client, there's the therapist, and there's the touch practitioner. In this case, me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started doing what every time I would come into town or she was coming here, before we would meet in person, we would meet on a Zoom call, all three of us. And I would get caught up. What's been happening in your therapy? What are you noticing are your current most active memories that are showing up for you in your day-to-day life or in your EMDR? And what do we think might show up in a session together? I don't work with like okay, I'm coming in with a plan. This is what we're doing today. It's very much client led because that's the work that we do. And so but I want to know what's been happening so I'm kind of prepared. And and fast forward, we've done this quite a few times. And she kept saying, "Man, it would be so cool to get you and my therapist in the same room together because it's always been across the country over Zoom." And I went into her town specifically to do this because the therapist was interested in what would happen if I was able to hold the client while she had her EMDR session. And so we did an intensive in March of this year where I held her for about 3 hours of EMDR. And the therapist and I went to breakfast the next morning, and I said, so I've never been in one of your EMDR sessions without me holding the client. Clearly, this is the only time. So I have nothing to compare to. What was different about me being there? Because I know what was different for me. In our cuddle sessions, a lot of really intense feelings come up. I am holding her, but I'm holding the space. I'm also trying to like listen to my intuition of like what would happen if we got up and walked in and out of the bathroom together, right? Like I'm there for her, but I also have this gut instinct that kicks in sometimes, and I'll be like, well, what would happen? How would it feel if I laid on top of you and compressed your body? Does that seem like something you might want to try? Like how can we use this incredible space to be as helpful in her healing journey as possible? And so the therapist reported that the difference was that she had much more somatic release than she ever has had when it's just the client having to kind of hold herself while going through this intense recovery process. And since we have that, I think, really deep relationship with each other, all the parts of her know me, right? She's already resourcing her time with me when she's in these EMDR sessions with the therapist, and to have me there in person was just an extra level of magic. And I said, "What are we going to do with this?" And she goes, "Well, I think we got to write a case study." And I said, "Well, then a case study isn't just a one-time event." So now every time I go back to the East Coast, I swing through her city and make sure that we get to do it again. So we'll be doing it. We missed the last one because her therapist was sick while I was in town, which was a bummer. But we have another session on the books for October, and I'm excited to get back in that space with her.
So if someone's listening, when someone says, this is bringing up strong feelings, just hearing someone on top
Hmm.
of you going into the bathroom together, like that could be triggering for, or not. Like if you're just listening,
Hmm.
going, this sounds so way out there. Like,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
someone's having a reaction to what you're saying.
Hmm.
What do you invite them to do? Like if they're having a reaction to what you're saying now
Hmm.
as they're listening.
I think it depends on who's having the reaction.
Yeah.
If it's a therapist having a reaction, I invite you to just be curious, right? Put aside the things that you think you know and think like if let's just I think of like the triadic model as one of the safest ways to do this kind of work. And if your client's going to go seek out these things on their own anyways, which a lot of them do, being involved in it is safer for the client, helping them learn how to like, what do you think you need to feel safe with this practitioner? Do you still feel safe with this practitioner? Having that bird's eye view of what's going on in this other outside work from what's happening inside of your talk therapy space, I think that is like the best overall wraparound care that your client could have. So yes, it sounds maybe beyond some people's risk tolerance. And if it's beyond your risk tolerance, cool, you don't have to do it. Right?
Yeah. I was
This is
thinking more the
this,
client, like
yeah,
clients listening. Like they're like,
yeah,
this is triggering me. Like this feels like I'm having a reaction. Like let's say a
yeah,
client's like people in general, just listeners are
mhm,
listening, they're having a
yeah.
reaction.
Well, I think that you know what you're ready for. If this is not where you're at, Well, trust me, we don't jump in here. That is not something that happens. I think we started the deeper work a good 6 months or more into just having a regular Cuddlist session. Like the big aha moment in my space the first time was that she was able to lay with her back to the door and she caught herself and she was like, "Whoa, look at me. I've never felt this safe before."
Mhm.
And that is a question I ask clients a lot. Like, what do you need to feel safe? And a lot of times they're like, I don't even know what that feeling is.
Exactly. They have no idea.
Right. And then sometime in our work, usually not the first session, this is a client that has had lots of work with her therapist. She has felt safe in other places. But so often in the work together, there comes a time where they're like, I think I know what you mean now. Right. I think I'm feeling safe right now. Like, so if you're not
Mhm.
if you're not able to do that right now, that's not unusual. But there's something there in that reaction. If you're not seeing a therapist, maybe you should go see a therapist.
Mhm.
That would be my thing is if you're having a
There's
reaction to
something there
this,
for
there's
you.
something there.
That's what I was going to
Yeah.
say. Get curious about it because
Hmm.
I can imagine everyone's going to have different responses or reactions to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like some might be like, oh, yes, sign me up for that. I would like that. Some are like, whoa. And so just kind of
Hmm.
noticing with compassionate curiosity what
Hmm.
might be there for you, I think is such a gift.
Yeah.
And
I-
feeling your feet on the floor, taking a deep breath. Like there is something to be explored whenever
mhm.
we have a reaction to anything, no matter what it is. Like if my body reacts, or my thoughts react, or maybe my breath reacts.
Hmm.
It's just,
And I was at that place at one time where I was afraid to like for me my fear zone was ever doing any psychedelics. I was like I don't want to know what kind of dark stuff is on the other side of that. Right? But as I have gained a sense of trust in myself, those things have been less scary for me to walk into. So it's like an onion, right? We don't start by going
mhm,
right to the deep center. I remember having a training one time, and the therapist said, our brains will never give us more than we're ready for. Like our memories will never be more than what we're ready for. Is that true? I don't know, but it
mhm,
guides me, right? That if the client brings something up, I'm going to make the assumption that they're ready for it. And that is what I think is the most important quality to Cuddlist itself, is that it is client led. It is, I'm never going to be accused of Michelle offered me a hug and I didn't want it, but I didn't know
mhm,
how to tell her no. And that is, I think, how people walk through the world so often. Like if you're dating, having that skill set. I remember doing cuddle parties. I mentioned that earlier. Cuddleparty.org is an organization, and I'm a trained facilitator for them. It's a events that are all over the world. And I remember doing my first one, and one of the feedbacks I got at the end was a woman that said, "You know, I'm going to stop saying yes to every date request that comes in. I thought I was obligated to say yes to these offers." And I'm like, if I change no other life, let it be that. I will take that. That is enough for me to just, if you've never thought that you have choice, like if that's all this work is you sit here and make the choice to not do anything in a session, that is empowering.
mhm,
That is empowering. And some of my work has definitely looked like that, where it's just, we've never cuddled. And it's just, especially women, learning how to be in choice and have their own needs and desires that are not just a response to their partner's needs and
mhm.
desires. If that's all the work I did, that would be okay.
And do you think that's because you're like giving permission all along the way for consent? Like you're really
Oh,
mindful of the
I'm
consent. Do you think
really,
that is the differentiating factor of how they're having these epiphanies? Like, well, I can decide no. I
okay.
can have a voice and say no because you are asking consent along the way.
They're getting to see how it feels different,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I say, Let's play a game. Are you down for a quick game,
Yeah,
Kristen?
let's go.
Okay, great.
Let's go.
So if
So you
I
just asked
run,
consent. So I love that. Okay.
yeah. So I'm gonna offer you things, and I want you to say no to every one of my invitations. Clearly, we can't really do any of them anyways because we're here across the internet, but I'm gonna make some really silly requests of you, and I want you to say no to every one of those requests. Even if you want to say yes, you have to say no. Okay? Are you
Okay.
ready?
I'm
Any
ready.
questions?
Say no to
Okay.
everything.
All right. Kristen, could I borrow your beautiful pink sweater that you have on today?
No,
Thank you for taking care of yourself. Could I make you a sandwich?
no,
Would you like $1 million? Could I give you $1 million?
no,
Um, may I scratch your back?
no,
Would you scratch my back?
no,
Um, could I take you for a spa day?
no.
Um, would it be okay if I picked your nose?
No.
Okay. So, question, could you feel it in your body when you wanted to say yes, but
Oh
you had
my
to say no?
gosh, so many times. My I listen to my body. So my body's like, "Woo." I was doing the opposite of what my body wanted to say yes to.
Yeah. Some people have never noticed that their body does that. Some people have never known that what my colleague likes to say is that like yes and no is not a decision we make, it's a sensation in our body,
Mm, yes.
right? It's a state of being, it's not a decision. Right?
Yes.
And so if we reverse that, and I'm gonna play real quick. You have to say yes to everything. Even
Okay.
if you want to say no, know that we're not going to do any of it. Okay, so same kinds of questions. Um, can we go to breakfast tomorrow?
Yes.
Could I borrow your car?
Yes.
Uh, can I cut your hair?
Yes.
Can I paint your toenails?
Yes.
Can I stick my finger in your ear?
Yes.
Can I scratch your back?
Yes.
Will you rub my feet?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a comparison for you? Does it
Yes.
feel even worse to have to say yes to something you want to be a no to?
I think at times it can, yes.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
depends, but yes. I mean,
S-
I it was a very interesting because my body was like on both accounts, giving me
mhm.
very strong information.
Yeah. So sometimes, well, I say a lot of times people can feel that. This is not a difficult exercise for some people to get started in. And maybe the lesson they learn from this exercise is, oh, my body really knows. So if I slow down, check in
Mm-hmm.
with
Yes.
myself, I know what I know the answer, right? For some people, if they have childhood abuse, that has been trained out of them. And so if I'm working with a client that has an abuse background and we try to do this exercise, sometimes I've heard, I don't feel that feeling. And I'm like, that's okay. It makes sense that you don't feel that feeling. We can build that feeling back up, right? It's one of those kind of like diagnostic tools that also happens to be an incredible exercise that really is like one of those like take it home and practice this.
Yes, because many people are dissociated from their bodies, right? They've
Mhm,
disconnected from their bodies because it was a protective part to feel
mhm.
safe.
And we can bring that back. And
Mhm.
this is again the beauty and the power of working in collaboration with the talk therapist is I get to do a lot of the things that the talk therapist can't do.
Mhm.
And so that's why the therapist that I do the EMDR work with, she calls me her hands, right? Because she knows that I can do the things in session that she's not going to be able to do with the client because it would get too messy.
That's very true. It's
Hmm.
very true. Our time went so quickly. Is there
Hmm.
anything that I didn't cover that you felt like was really important?
I think that I would like the audience to know that I talk about this work from the lens of how I do this work. I've been doing this work for 10 years. As I've grown and done my own work, the types of clients I work with have shifted a lot. And Cuddlist isn't just about for the trauma survivor who wants to do this reparative, we call it, a corrective emotional experience. This is also a really great service for those that, like I said, are lonely, have skin hunger or touch starvation. I have a client that comes just to maintain his ability, like he doesn't want to date right now. And this gives him a space to feel connected and receive affection and just feel like a human being for a little while without using the dating world to get those needs met. I say it's like if you are actively dating, it's a space to, how you say don't go grocery shopping while you're hungry. Don't go dating while you're affection starved because you might make some less than
Mhm.
ideal choices because we're trying to get those very, very human needs met. Um, this is a modality that welcomes all sorts of people to utilize it for whatever they need to use it for. And so when you hear me talk about it, I fear that people will hear it strictly from I can't work with a cuddlist unless I have some kind of big traumatic work to sort through because most of the people that utilize Cuddlist are not utilizing Cuddlist for the way that my clients use me. But it's just become my specialty. So you can learn more at cuddlist.com about finding people in your area or even taking the training if this is something that resonates with you as like really heart-centered work in learning how to be the helper that a lot of us naturally are, but with really good boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
To close out, what is your favorite book that's been the most impactful in your life?
In my work, it
Just in
would
your
be,
life or your
well,
work. You could do your
my
work.
work
Yeah.
and my life, I don't know. I'm one of those
You could
people
do
that's
your
like,
work. Let's do your work.
this is my special interest. And so I think the one that I bring up the most is Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker.
Hmm.
I think it's one of my absolute favorites, although I have quite a list of favorites. For my work, I think that's my favorite. For myself, the most impactful has been Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Oh, I love Lindsay Gibson.
I was the emotionally immature parent, and that was a really interesting
Mm.
listen. I do audiobooks, and I remember I was driving to Santa Barbara. I can almost visualize. I have aphantasia, so visualization is a little difficult for me, but I can tell you I was on this winding road, like on the Pacific Coast Highway, and I was the passive parent. But I'd done all this work. Because of this work, I had already kind of started to repair that with my children. And so it was really fascinating to look back at it and feel real heavy grief about it, but also know that like if it wasn't for me accidentally finding Cuddlist, I don't know what relationship I would have with my children. Yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you for
Life
sharing
changing.
that. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. I just think we're all humans trying to do the
Hmm.
best we can with what we've gone through in our lives, and
Yeah.
humanizes us. Like there's no one out there doing it perfectly. And we
No.
if we have I'm willing to own my mistake, quote unquote mistakes, and
Hmm.
try to do repair work. I think that is the gift. Like
Hmm.
that is the gift. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being on the Close the Chapter podcast. I
Oh,
am
thank you
so
for having
grateful for
me.
the work you're doing. This was enlightening. This was a different conversation than I've had before. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you and what you're doing in the world. And I'm so just grateful for your heart. So thanks
Thank
for
you.
being with
I'm so
us.
glad that you reached out. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.